It is on an issue on which much discussions have already started. We certainly want to make our position very clear. And it relates to the reference made by Sri Narendra Modi as regards the Ministry of Environment and Forest. A matter of very serious implications, a matter which concerns all of us, and certainly the BJP deems fit to explain the context in which this expression, Jayanthi tax, was used. We have every reason to raise this issue because in the last 10 years, the Ministry of Environment and Forest was expected to run professionally, was expected to run to bring that fine balance between environment consciousness, exploitation of natural resources, but making sure development doesn't get hampered. It was an expectation which is natural because our environment and forests are very precious for us and we need to have certain very serious concern about it. And post 1991, it was expected that that ministry would play a very professional role in taking executive decisions which are only right, so that that balance would underline the need for growth about which the UPA speaks every day, and not become a baggage for that growth. A Ministry of Environment and Forest, if it runs professionally, can enable growth, add to some points in our growth percentages. But if it performs its role less than professionally, with other collateral interests in mind, certainly it would only bring down the expectations that we can have of that ministry and also bring down growth, which is exactly what happened. And let me remind you all that even in December, on 23rd December, the leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha, Shri Arun Jaitley, had written about it. Written exactly all that I'm saying today, and also saying, therefore, what is the underlying basis of the Jayanthi tax narration by Shri Narendra Modi. It's not an off-the-cuff remark, certainly. It is not a remark which was just made in slight, certainly. It was a remark which was made because Ministry of Environment and Forest even went to the extent of questioning the Supreme Court when that centrally empowered committee was being formed on the suggestion of the Supreme Court, so that there is greater transparency in the decision-making of the ministry. Wasn't it Ministry of Environment and Forest which questioned the Supreme Court's suggestion, saying, no, Supreme Court or courts should not be usurping the power of the executive? If indeed that is the way in which executive protection is being made, or safeguarding the interest of the executive was being made, question remains to be answered as to why that Ministry of Environment and Forest did not professionally run, making the Supreme Court to say, let there be a committee appointed, a centrally empowered committee be appointed, so that decisions taken by that ministry are clearly understood and let it become transparent. If you could go to the extent of saying, let it not be usurped by the courts, why then so many files and decisions were remaining pending? And if this knowledge was not in the public domain, why was it becoming an issue on which many of those people interested in development in India approached the government, the Prime Minister's office in particular, to say, please do something about it, we are unable to get our clearances. Ministry of Environment and Forests, sometime during the past 10 years, worked like a green ministry, where green consciousness was very high, Green because they were more conscious of the environment protection side of the argument rather than the development side of the argument. But it also sometimes functioned as a red ministry, unfortunately. A red ministry for two reasons. One, because it went on showing red flags saying we won't clear and frightened everybody out. Delayed decisions, kept files pending. Red flag because nothing was moving. But red flag also because they were cherry picking. Selectively clearances were being given on other considerations rather than environment and protection of environment. Delhi was abuzz with gossip and also industry fears that environment ministry, rather than becoming a ministry for clearing, is now becoming the nodal ministry for holding back clearances. We have been repeatedly saying, you either clearly go ahead clearing files, give the clearances, or refuse to give the clearances. You can't be sitting on them. You can't be sitting on files, and now it emerges that even files which were signed by the minister were being kept in the ministry. So if Narendra Modi ji chooses to say Jayanthi tax, there is such an outrage in the Congress. I can understand the anxiety. But that outrage should have been when files were being piling up. Files were not getting cleared by the minister. When the files were being held back with red flags being raised for many other things rather than environment clearances or environment considerations. There was no outrage on that account. No sense of outrage in the Congress that ministry is holding back a lot of clearances which were critical for the national development agenda. Bharat Nirmala, they speak about it. Here was a ministry which was holding back files not for 1 year, 2 years, but 3, 4 years continuously. Files which were signed in 2011 are even today being searched as to where the minister has kept now that the new minister has taken over. So we have been repeatedly saying, you stipulate the conditions, state clearly what are the norms which you expect to be followed, or else reject. Whereas what was happening in the ministry was that they were sitting on the files, refusing to clear them for whatever reasons, and therefore causing concern to this economy. By stipulating clearly what you wanted, you will at least leave no scope for interpretation. No, by stipulating, there won't be a scope for interpretation, and therefore they did not want to stipulate. So you can't have it both ways, and that's exactly what happened. At a time when ministry was expected to clear, you had minister sitting with red flag and becoming back again, taking us back again to those days of license quota Raj. That was what the Ministry of Environment and Forest had become. And the kind of demands apparently which were made for clearing files was public knowledge. Concerns, and why then, after all, was the minister removed? And if I'm questioning that the minister was removed for some other reason, the Congress party may soon come back to say, no, it was nothing to do with those reasons that you're imagining. But even if they charge me with that, I have reasons to believe that she was removed because of non-performance, because of delay, because of holding back on files, because today it's not just the BJP, but newspapers are telling you about the number of files which are being held back, which are being searched, which are being held back for more than 2 years. So if 350 files are being searched, which are being lost, some even after signatures, since 2011, it's not a major issue for the Congress to answer. They're getting outraged by Jayanthi tax, which has been uttered by Shri Narendra Modi. Outrage should have been for having kept the ministry bogged down with this kind of an activity, outrage should have been for the Congress to sit and watch this happen when they were talking about growth. Outrage should have been that industry is just sitting with its hand held together saying, what can we do with this kind of a development? Taking us back to pre-1991 days. That's when the outrage was required, not now. And that was when the Congress did not show any outrage. And I'm glad my research team gave me all the information required after Sri Veerappa Moily has taken over. How many files have been cleared? How many projects have got clearances? And what is the size of these projects? Just let us go through that for a minute. Orissa, POSCO, which has 50,000 crores of investment on its bill, has been cleared. Why was it held back by the earlier minister was dropped? Can it be because of any Jayanthi tax? NHPC's 520 megawatt Teesta 4 Sikkim has been cleared by Sri Veerappa Moily now. Why was it held back all this while? Within 2 weeks of the minister taking on charge, he's clearing it all up. Wasn't it held back by the minister earlier? Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh, a major 600 megawatt project has been cleared. I'm not saying I will clear these. I'm not claiming that any of this is being cleared by the BJP. It's Veerappa Moily ji who's clearing it, who's just taken over after Jayanthi Natarajan ji. Rapidly, within 2 weeks, so many files. Hinduja National Power, 1040 megawatts, Visakhapatnam, cleared. Chennai Petroleum oil pipeline project, crude oil pipeline project in Tamil Nadu, cleared. NHPC, which I had mentioned earlier, cleared. I'm listing out 6 projects which are more than about 50,000 crores, 10 crores, 10,000 crores. Aren't these major projects which would have helped India to grow faster? Growth which is UPA's concern, as though nobody else worries about it. And therefore, without making a longer speech from my side, I just want to let you know that there are enough reports to say 65 clearances happens within 2 weeks. And I've shown you about the number of files which have been held back by the previous minister. So, sense of outrage need not be at the BJP. The sense of outrage, if anything, should have been on the minister who sat over files, cleared selectively, had cherry picking as a consideration rather than environment, and therefore the Jayanthi tax, which is a metaphorical expression for what exactly happened during the tenure of the earlier environment minister, should be more a concern for all of us. And the Congress's outrage should have been then and even now on that minister who failed to deliver rather than on Mr. Modi. He's raised this question. After all, this is also equally coming out in public domain. So Congress, re-divert your sense of outrage at your own minister who has been removed by you, not to our prime ministerial candidate. Thank you.